do so without losing credits they already have.
All right, so I think this is where you're going to start hearing a lot more from me. So as Amber mentioned in my introduction, my role is the coordinator of academics and accreditation for our concurrent enrollment program at Purdue Northwest. So my role really is in helping the faculty on our campus align the curriculum with the high schools that we partner with. So this is a lot of stuff, at least in the beginning phases of this, that kind of fall under my role, and then the other pieces that really fall under Rachel's role. So this is kind of a snapshot, I guess, if you will, of sort of the process of aligning your coursework and creating these transfer agreements. At PNW, we do call them articulation agreements. So if you hear me say that, I'm trying to make sure I use the common terminology, but that's the one that we kind of rely on. So all of these steps are sort of part of this process of creating your transfer agreement or your articulation agreement. They don't have to necessarily be done in this order. They don't have to be done, you know, one before the other necessarily. Multiple parts of this can be going on at the same time. But all of these pieces really need to be taken into consideration before you have that fully finalized partnership agreement in place. So obviously one part of it is developing the course if it doesn't already exist. So if you are not already offering the course that you want to be partnering with, then make sure you get that curriculum developed. We'll talk a little bit more about what that will look like when you are actually having those conversations with the high school in a second. But so step one, make sure you have that course developed. Start to try to understand the credit transfer requirements. I'll go into that a little bit more in depth as well in a second, kind of some of those things you really have to take into consideration. Research and identify potential schools, contact school administration, discuss and negotiate agreement terms. I will kind of go into this in some sort of hopefully helpful and not overly technical ways in a moment as well. And then actually implementing the program and monitoring the progress. And I will also talk about some of the things you have to take into consideration there. So again, this isn't, you don't have to do one before you can start the next one, but these are all the pieces that really do have to be completed in order to develop that sort of fully functional and mutually beneficial agreement. So step one, create the curriculum. Seems like a pretty, should be pretty straightforward, but there are some things you need to obviously take into consideration when you're doing this. So if this is a brand new course that you have never offered before, you obviously want to make sure you know what it is you're trying to offer. So the easiest thing, there's two ways you can approach this. If you know already you want to partner with, let's say, you know, the nearest high school to your campus, you know, you want to work with them, you could reach out to them and you could start building this curriculum together in conjunction with that instructor. I would say, and having spoken to instructors though in the last 5 years in my role, and also, I don't know if, you know, Michael and Amber as former educators could agree with this, those teachers have a lot on their plates, and I think they would be much more comfortable if you came to them with that developed curriculum ready to go, rather than having to make them weigh in on it. Oftentimes, if you can come to them and say, here's the learning objectives, here's the key assessments, here's what we're trying to get at in the course, then they can take it from there and figure out how to make that work within their schedule and work within what they have to do for their high school requirements. But it's a lot easier for them if you are coming to them with something that already has kind of this you know, fully fleshed out set of expectations. Some of the things to consider though, when you are thinking about that curriculum at the university college level, you might see those students in your class for 16 weeks, 3 hours a week. That high school instructor might see them 5 hours a week, 6 hours a week, 10 hours a week, depending on how much time they spend with them. So as you're developing your curriculum, have it set to what your university requirements are going to be, but keep in mind when you have those conversations, it might look a little bit different when you come out at the other end of those conversations. But you should fully expect, if you're creating these articulation agreements and the high school is teaching them to your standards, that they should match your university's learning objectives. The key assessments should be something that you would expect of your college students, because if they're getting credit for it as a college class, you want it to match that as well. So first, make sure that you know which courses it is that you want to offer, and then make sure you have that curriculum kind of developed or at least outlined before you start those conversations with the actual instructors who will be teaching comparable courses. Or if those high school students are getting credit through the university, you want to make sure that at least you know, again, specifically which courses it is. All right, so continuing on, um, before you can really get too deep into this work, you obviously need to know which schools you're going to be partnering with. And so this is where Rachel Myers is our expert on partnerships and student outreach and engagement. So she's going to chat a little bit about what this is actually going to look like when you're having those conversations.
All right, thank you, Katie. I'm sure all of you guys know, you're faculty, you work with people. It's just all about communication and doing some research. So what I do when we partner with, not only do Katie and I do concurrent enrollment, but we also work with our School of Education and Counseling. So we work with probably about 150 different schools, maybe 80 different districts. And it's all about just building those relationships. And again, I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't know already, but we research, we go to the schools, we host them here on campus. We do everything we can to be transparent, open, honest with them on everything. We explain all of our steps. Katie comes in and talks about the whole MOU articulation agreement. I swoop in and I talk about how we get kids admitted and registered and how we keep communicating with them throughout the semester or throughout the year, if it's a year-long course, on what to expect. That, these concurrent enrollment classes aren't just cheaper credits, that there's actually pros and cons if not taken seriously. So we keep those, we make sure there's no gaps in communication at all. I'll talk about, I know Katie and I are going to talk about some outreach initiatives we have a little bit later, right, Katie? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Just again, to build on those relationships that we have. So again, research, go to the school, show them that you're willing to meet them there in their space where, maybe they're a little more comfortable, but then also bring them on campus and then show off what you have to offer as well. Just again, to get those relationships, to build on those relationships.
And this is where I think even this presentation is an example of something you could be doing at university, which is figuring out who's already working in the schools. So as Rachel mentioned, our office is working the schools in multiple facets, right? Not just as part of our concurrent enrollment program, but as part of our School of Education and Counseling. So figure out where are there already strong partnerships, because those are going to be your easiest conversations if they already have experience working with your institution. So if you know that, for example, in concurrent enrollment, we have a partner school that we work with, but they also work really closely with the School of Education and Counseling. And we wouldn't have known that until we started kind of doing this crossover work. And they are a really strong partner that we had no idea just how deep the connections went. So figuring out who on campus is already working with area schools and figuring out how you can maybe piggyback off of those relationships is going to make those kind of strategic choices a lot easier.
All right. Again, contacting the schools. I kind of already talked about this. Once you research, and those relationships that you do have, or maybe that you want to have, again, I love getting out of the office and going into the schools and meeting face to face, but obviously that's not always an option. So definitely contacting them, emailing them, calling them, following up, meeting with them, maybe even off campus at somewhere else, a middle meeting place. But definitely, again, just working on building those relationships or creating them or building on what you have. As Katie said, knowing who works with which schools already. Again, you guys know how important building these relationships are. I'm not going to keep preaching on this, but it's something great. And when these schools know they can rely on you, when these schools know that you are transparent and that you're honest and that you will do anything to help them out, it's just a great partnership.
All right. So understanding the school's requirements is going to be probably a lot more complicated than it sounds at first glance, because there's a lot of pieces you have to take into consideration. So the first piece that you have to really be thinking about as you are starting to contact the schools is, what is the goal for the students here? So is it that they're going to earn both high school and college credit? Are they just earning college credit? Is it elective credit? Is it diploma requirements? Those all vary. not just state by state, but also accrediting body by accrediting body. It could look very different if you are an HLC school versus if you are accredited by someone else. So these are the things you have to start considering. So the first question is what is the goal for the student? So if they are earning it as what we would call concurrent enrollment, dual credit, they're getting high school credit and college credit, you need to then be working with their administration to figure out how is it fulfilling their diploma requirements. I can speak, all day about what Indiana requires, and I'll probably still be a little bit wrong because there's about 4 different diploma options in Indiana, and the courses all count differently if they're doing an honors diploma versus one that's more career and technical ed focused. It just varies completely state by state. So doing a little bit of a deep dive into what does that high school diploma look like in your state and what are the school requirements is going to really help kind of build that base as you start in those conversations with the schools. So again, understanding if the student is just getting college credit for it, that's great. But if they're able to get high school credit for it, then you want to make sure you understand that. Another reason why that's important is because if they're getting high school and college credit for it, then your institution might also be what we call a NACEP institution, which is the National Accrediting Body for Concurrent Enrollment Programs, which then also brings with it a whole other set of things that need to be done, not probably by you, but by that concurrent enrollment office at your institution. So this plays into not just understanding what the K12 space is requiring out of this partnership, but what does your institution require as well? So doing a little bit of a deep dive, trying to determine if there is a dual credit office or concurrent enrollment office or college in the high school, whatever it might be called in your area. But if those offices already exist, working with them to make sure that those requirements are being met on both ends. Making sure you also understand, and this goes back to something I hinted or alluded to earlier, which is what modifications might need to be made on the school's end for that course. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but just keeping in mind that the high schools might have different schedules, different grading requirements, different prerequisites as to who can participate in these classes. So thinking about, really making sure you understand what you might get in terms of questions, what you might get in terms of pushback before you start those conversations. Because again, it really demonstrates that you are prepared to walk into that partnership when you get that set up. So if you aren't the expert on it, again, I would say, like I said, I could talk about Indiana all day and I'll still probably be wrong on 20% of it because things change. So know who those experts are at your institution, who the experts are at the high school you're working with. When you're making those contacts, as Rachel mentioned earlier, make sure you're making the right contact, because just talking to the teacher might be missing a whole set of things that you need to do. So again, just kind of collecting that information, making sure you have a fuller understanding before you start into those actual specific curriculum alignment and sort of actual documentation pieces. Because then you get to actually talk to the teacher and align your curriculum. So this is where, I talked earlier about how you want to make sure you have that kind of fully defined curriculum before you start the conversations, right? You want to know what the course or courses are that you want to be offering. And then once you've now, approached the school, you've probably talked to your admin or your dual credit office and their admin. Now you can align the curriculum with the folks who might actually be teaching it. So if it is a course that you yourself or a college faculty is teaching, and you're teaching it maybe in the high school or they're coming to you, that's obviously a very different piece. But if it's a high school instructor teaching it in the high school, there's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. And this is where there might be a little bit of a give and take that has to take place. So the first piece is obviously just reviewing the curriculum, making sure that, if they're saying we're going to offer this opportunity to juniors, are their juniors prepared? Are they, are there prerequisites they should have had? Are there things they need to be doing? But the second piece, and again, I hinted at this earlier as well, is understanding the high school, their limitations, let's say. So, but also opportunities, because again, those teachers probably get a lot more face time with the students than we do at the college or university level. They see them potentially every day versus, 2 to 3 times a week. They get the students get a lot more supports as well, potentially. So be thinking about, is it being offered as a semester course or as a year-long course? That could vary depending on what you perceive as being valuable for the course and how it might work within the high school schedule. Be thinking about materials. This is always a tricky conversation because High schools don't have the liberty to buy books like we do at colleges and universities, right? Where the onus is on the student. They have different schedules in terms of when they can place their book orders, how much they can spend on their book orders. So if you go in and say, here's your fully defined syllabus and you have to use X book, be prepared that you might get some questions on that, or you might just get at a minimum, we can't do it then for another year because we can't put this even into our board for another 6 months or whatever the case may be. Be prepared that they might have a lot more added to their course than what you have, right? So if they're teaching it as a year-long course, as long as they're meeting what you've identified as learning objectives and the key assessments, they might actually be able to add more into the class. So be prepared to kind of see a slightly modified syllabus once you actually align this curriculum. But I will also say, and this is again from working with high school instructors for now going on 5 years, they are very happy to do whatever it is that's going to meet the standards. They want the students to succeed, and obviously you do as well. So again, just in thinking about this though, from that concurrent perspective, if a high school teacher is teaching it, be prepared to have those conversations. The other piece, and this is a big one, is thinking about what does it look like to have a high school teacher teaching your course, and what does it mean for them to be credentialed to teach your course? So this also varies by accrediting body. The HLC, again, I can speak to because that's our accrediting body, has very different requirements for high school teachers to teach dual credit courses in the high school. If it's a gen ed course versus a what they call career and technical ed course, which depending on how you view your courses, it could fall into either one of those categories. So be aware that you're going to be needing to have those conversations as well, and answer those questions as they come up. So again, I kind of already talked about this in my last slide, but as you're actually having conversations then about what does the course look like, how is it being taught, you just need to also understand how is that course going to be transferred. So if they are teaching it in the high school and getting college credit for it, does it transfer to other institutions? Is it only a course that's going to count at your institution? Is it just a course that you think is really valuable for them? Because those are also going to bring up a lot of questions with the administration of the schools you're partnering with, because they also know that they have to offer as many opportunities to their students as possible. And so if the students aren't specifically coming to your institution, they might push back if it's a course that only counts at your institution or that has limited transferability. So this is where, again, you want to be just kind of mindful of those types of questions when you're having these conversations. And just be prepared to, kind of be, again, a little bit flexible as you're looking at that curriculum and those transfer details.
Okay. And we're now at legal review and documentation. So this is going to be something that you want to make sure that your deans, principals, and maybe some other administrators are going to be part of this conversation. So this is once both parties have agreed to the terms of the credit transfer agreement, you need to have it reviewed by your legal counsel to ensure that you're in compliance with both your accrediting body as well as the K12 schools accrediting body. So make sure that you're consulting your legal experts and that you have a draft agreement document that outlines the terms, responsibilities, and expectations of both parties. You want to make sure that you include details such as course descriptions, the credit transfer processes, and student eligibility criteria, and if there is going to be a termination clause, what that would be.
Katie, do you want to jump in with anything about MOUs?
Well, the only thing that I would maybe add here is that likely, again, someone at your institution is already doing a lot of this. So hopefully you're not starting from scratch and creating these documents. And that's where I really appreciate the partnership that we've built with Michael and Amber, because again, they thought to come to us and ask some of the questions because it's work we're already doing rather than, reinventing the wheel. So likely your institution already has a standard MOU that they use for their partnerships. They probably already have some template that they use for those articulation agreements. And then you can go in and kind of, tinker with it, kind of play Mad Libs with it, change it to what you need it to be. But don't feel like you have to start this process from scratch. You can usually get a good jumping off point if you can identify those experts on your campus who are already doing it.
Thank you. And then you're going to sign the agreement. So when you're signing the agreement, once all parties are satisfied with the terms and conditions, next slide, please. You can sign the credit transfer agreement. You want to make sure that all relevant stakeholders, such as the school administrators, department heads at your school, and possibly board members, approve and sign the agreement. This could be a formal contract, or this could be an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. So you might want it. This might be something that the K12 school might want to organize a signing ceremony to show that there is some kind of cooperation between your school and theirs, because it is a selling point for the high school to be able to offer these courses to their students. So it's something that they're going to want to publicize. So always keep that in mind. And ensure that all parties involved, including school administrators, approve and sign the agreement. So make sure that everybody's signing what they need to sign.
Can I jump in and answer a question that came up in the chat really quickly? So someone in the chat asked if we had a sample MOU. I don't know if you have one that you guys have as a template. I'm happy to try to find a draft to share with you, to share out to the participants.
Perfect.
The one other thing I'll say about the MOU is in our experience, it's kind of a living document that you want to think very carefully about those terms that you put on there. So one thing that we have started to do is we've done our initial MOU as a 1-year MOU. And if that seems to work, then we've graduated it to a 3-year MOU, to a 3-year partnership. So that way it gives us time though in that first year to figure out if this is not working, if we're missing things that should be outlined in this partnership, we can then do that, make that change, do another 1-year MOU until we get to the point where it's a 3-year MOU. So keep that in mind, that again, these are not partnerships where you sign it and then you never communicate with them again, but that the MOU could be something that evolves over time.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie.
All right. And then we are going to want to implement and monitor the program. So you want to begin implementing the credit transfer program according to the agreed upon terms. And you also want to make sure that you're monitoring the progress and effectiveness of the program regularly. So like Katie said, maybe starting off with a 1-year MOU and then moving to a 3-year MOU. And this allows you to make adjustments to it if it's not going the way that either you think it should be going or the way that the other institution. So you want to start offering the courses outlined in the agreement, and then check the progress, and then this is very important, to gather feedback from students, teachers, and administrators so you can get a full assessment of the effectiveness of the program. And of course, you want to have continuous communication. And you want to maintain those open lines of communication with your K12 partners to address any issues, maybe to provide support and explore opportunities for further collaboration. We've already mentioned NACEP or NACEP, and it's something that you should look into with your school. Is your school NACEP accredited? Because they might be able to offer some support as well. So again, maintain open lines of communication and address any challenges or issues that arise promptly, and try to be collaborative with your teaching partners in the K12 school, and always explore opportunities for expanding the partnership, such as joint events, workshops, maybe research projects, or bringing the students onto the from the classroom onto campus to see what exactly your campus is going to be like.
Can I add something right here?
Of course.
So, I joke around with Katie all the time when her and I, tag when we present. And I always tell people, Katie, like, I feel like I do the fun stuff because I do the students and school partnerships, the outreach initiatives. Katie deals with accreditation and stuff like that, right? But she loves her spreadsheets. Anyway, I say this because we are known for bringing our concurrent enrollment students onto campus so that they could, for instance, I'm thinking of our biology kids. We had Bio 101 happening, and we brought our kids, these high school kids from Gary, Indiana, who have never seen a college campus and then we had a cadaver lab at the time. So they got to go into this cadaver lab and see things. We had nursing students come walk them through, like our ambassadors and tour, and the kids, it's just once they start building, you know, my theme obviously during this presentation is just the word partnership. So when they meet these kids, I had some kids that seriously, these high school kids were like, no, I'm going to USI, University of Southern Indiana for nursing. But after just stepping foot on that campus and seeing the cadaver lab and meeting those nursing students, our undergrad admissions, like I have them talk to them too. They were filling out an application right then and there. So it's just these partnerships. So bringing them onto campus, I have these kids sit in, and I say kids all the time, but I have these kids sit in these undergrad classes so that they can also see what a college class is like, how it's different than their high school class. We always come back together and I ask them, what was the big difference between your high school class, even though it was dual credit, right? Your high school class compared to this college class. There's always some jokesters at first that raise their hand and they say, they can go to the bathroom anytime they want. But it does come back and the kids do say, I will never forget this one kid, I had him sit in a math for elementary teachers class. And these kids participate with the undergrad students. And he raised his hand and he said, college kids are actually human. And I said, you want to elaborate a little more? And he said, I always thought college kids were so much smarter than me and so much better than me. But just by coming on campus and participating in this undergrad class made me realize I'm no different and that I could totally do this. So Michael, you said bringing them on campus. We are huge advocates for that. And, if any of you guys want some ideas, we're more than happy to, share with you kind of some events that we do. But just again, to show how important it is to bring those high school kids onto campus, build those partnerships and those relationships now. But that would really help you all in your cybersecurity as well.
All right. And then finally, we are here to help. So we can offer mentoring, curriculum, lab development, and some limited lab hosting with an NDG lab. So remember that creating a CTA, this takes time and requires a lot of commitment, and that commitment is ongoing. So building a strong partnership with your K12 schools can benefit everyone involved by enhancing the students' education and fostering a relationship between your school and theirs. So it's important to understand that developing a successful CTA requires patience, teamwork, and a dedication to offering high quality education to secondary school students. So we hope that by following some of these guidelines and some of the advice that Katie and Rachel have offered all of us, you can establish a strong partnership that benefits both of your institutions. All right. So if you need help getting started, please reach out to us. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the process. And for those schools who do establish a new CTA, we can offer other support, such as the Ring curriculum. And I would like to thank University of Alabama Huntsville, for helping us with this. We can also offer some curriculum resource identification and customization, lab development based on some existing materials that we have, and lab hosting and sharing through PNW's NDG lab.
Michael, do you want Jesse to talk a little bit about the Ring curriculum?
Sure, of course.
Jesse, not to put you on the spot.
Jesse is here, right?
Yep, he is. But he just threw a link in the chat for us, which is great. And we'll let him share a little bit about Ring.
Hey everyone, my name is Jesse Hairston. I'm with the University of Alabama in Huntsville. I know early in this presentation, one of the first steps that they listed was to go ahead and establish a curriculum that you can share with the school to begin this process. And if you don't already have a curriculum in mind, might I suggest the Ring curriculum? We began developing this back in 2020. It's an online high school cybersecurity curriculum that we're giving any educator access to, whether you're K12, whether you're a college educator. And again, it's built for that high school student in mind. So we were targeting 9th through 12th graders with it. I sent the link through the chat so you can go on there. And if you scroll down to want more information, we have 2 different links that you can click on. One is a link to sign up for or to fill out our curriculum request form, where you can actually get access to our Canvas page with all the materials. You can download those and then teach the course, hopefully establish some dual credit transfer agreements with your local K-12 ecosystem. Or if you know students that want to sign up, we do offer classes online at no cost to them, and that's through that second link down there. And if you have any questions about this, I'll also put an email address in the chat that you can reach out to us at. So thanks for giving us a moment to shout it out.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Perfect. So we're going to open it up to you guys. Do you have any questions based on your school, what you've heard? You want to pick Katie and Rachel's brains? Well, we've got a nice panel of concurrent enrollment experts here. If you want to throw your question in chat, I'm happy to read it out loud. We're just going to open up the floor to you all. Otherwise, I have a list of some of the more common questions that we get. And Katie, you talked about this a little bit about the curriculum, but how strict really can I be? Like when I go in with this teacher, like I really have a set curriculum that I really want to have done. Like how much should I be flexing to meet these high school standards?
It's a great question, Amber. So we do get this question all the time because I think that some institutions have much more set syllabi than others. So, and even within institutions, some departments have more set syllabi than others, right? Like new instructors get a template and say, this is what your class looks like. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the tricky pieces you'll be navigating are the way the classes are set up in the high school. So if it's a year-long course, which sometimes happens, so a semester course at the college is offered as year-long at the high school, they're going to have a lot more time in their class. So again, our recommendation, and we really take this from NACEP guidelines, and I apologize for saying the acronym earlier. We're in higher ed, we're really good with acronyms and forgetting that not everyone speaks our language. So thank you, Michael, for popping that in the chat. But so NACEP is the accrediting body for all concurrent enrollment nationally. So when in doubt, I would say look at their standards and use that as your guidepost. So they do require very specific things to be in the syllabi and to be paired up within the course. Obviously, they want the learning objectives to be the same between an on-campus section and the high school section. At least one key assessment, whether that be a midterm, a final, one of the major assignments or papers or projects, should match kind of what the college campus and the high school are doing, both in terms of content, so what it's assessing, how it's being assessed. So it shouldn't be a paper assessment on campus and a multiple choice test in the high school, and in terms of kind of the weight on the overall grade. So it shouldn't be worth 50% of the grade on campus, but 10% of the grade in the high school. So though if you follow those pieces, it does kind of make sure that at least those major points that make the course a college level course are going to be the same at the high school. So I think when in doubt, kind of start there, and then feel free to kind of negotiate more if you want to, but at kind of a minimum, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. And I know you said with the NACEP acronym, and thanks, Mike, for throwing the link in there. How do I find out if my school's in NACEP or not?
Yeah, so the first kind of stop is checking to see if you have some sort of office of dual credit, concurrent enrollment. Again, it's called something different in every state. So I know, it's called college and high school, post-secondary educational opportunities. I think in Minnesota, it's called something different all over the place. So, but at its core level, see if someone at your campus is already doing dual credit or concurrent enrollment. If you aren't able to determine it from just, asking around at your own institution, I believe the NACEP website also has a list of all accredited body or all accredited institutions. So you could also use that as a resource.
Awesome.
I hope. I say that now. I hope they have it. They should have it.
Proletariat. How quickly, in your experience, I know it varies, but how quickly can I get an MOU going? Like how much time should I be budgeting from start to finish when it comes to this?
I'm going to say what I think, but then I'm also going to defer to Rachel because there's some systems in play that need to get done. The MOU itself can get done pretty quickly, honestly. If you have two willing parties, if the high school is interested and they want to offer it, and you have the curriculum and they have a person who can teach it, all of that can be done very quickly. So if someone reached out to me today and said, "Hey, can we get an MOU in place for spring?" We could do that. The other pieces, though, that get kind of muddled in there, which again, as faculty, you probably don't have to be as concerned about, but other folks do, like Rachel, are the student sides of the process. So Rachel, do you want to weigh in a little bit?
Sure. If you, okay, we get the MOU signed, I think Katie that has to go through the school board too, though, right? So sometimes you have to wait, like, you know, depending on when you submit that MOU and hope to get it signed. Hopefully it's in a good cycle of when the school board's meeting, so because I know that has held up a couple things here, because especially if something gets submitted in the end of May, and you know, we want to get something going for August. But yeah, so once we get everything signed, really, and like the syllabi get aligned, really we can get going pretty quickly, to tell you the truth. Is what we do anyway. We have an online, for our program, we have an online application and registration process. So as soon as that MOU articulation agreements get signed, it's gone through all the channels it needs to go through. And if the school's like, can we hurry and get this going for fall? You betcha, we will help. If that's what the school wants, we will do what we can to make it happen for them when they want, is what we do.
Awesome.
The times where there's holdup, and this is where we've, you know, again, if the school is super eager and they know we've got the people ready to sign, but it's December 21st and somehow we have to get the high school students admitted and registered between then and January 3rd, that's where you're going to run into issues. The actual process of building these agreements again, as long as you are communicating with the admin and have all those pieces ready on your end, developing it doesn't, you know, you shouldn't need more than a month to do that.
Okay. So
Even,
budget
even
like
on
a
the,
month.
even on the long end, you shouldn't even.
Yeah,
No,
so
it's helpful.
timing is just perfect. You know, it's just all, it comes down to timing. Because if someone at the end of September is like, hey, let's get this going, school started in August, can we, no, we would not retroactively register someone then, obviously. If it started, you know, we would just have to wait till the spring semester then.
Got it.
But it's
No.
all about just communicating that.
And then with the concurrent enrollment and the students paying fees and actually like being an enrolled student at the institution, are there, like, how are costs determined, or what should we keep in mind with costs, that kind of thing, as we're developing our agreement?
We can talk about what Indiana does, but this is another one of those spaces where it is so different from state to state and you know, just really across the board. Both Rachel and I have served on accreditation commissions as part of NASEP, so we've reviewed other places. So that's how we've gotten a sense of just how much it varies. But I know, again, in some states it's completely free for the students, depending on what that state supports. In the state of Indiana, I'll use us as the example, because this is where you might just find that you're exploring your state. There's all sorts of different stuff. So in the state of Indiana, the state has said that if it's one of the community colleges in Indiana, of which there's really only 2 systems, the courses are free to students. If it's a 4-year institution and it's what the state determines a priority course, which is those sort of highly transferable general education courses, it's $25 per credit hour, which the students and their families do pay, unless they're considered free and reduced lunch, in which case it's free. And if it falls under the career and technical education space in your 4-year institution, it is $105.10. So I say all of that, not because any of you should remember that, but just as an illustration of how complicated that question can get, depending on where you are. So just again, this is where you would probably not be the person expected to know all of this, but if you can figure out who at your institution does this, it's going to be tremendously helpful to help you get those questions answered.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. You know, are your students going to be able to afford the course if they do it? Yeah.
If even just in our one state, it's that confusing. I just don't want to speculate at all for what it might look like for you.
And we had talked a little bit about with the high school teachers teaching the courses, teaching the curriculum, and you mentioned that credentialing varies from state to state. So how can, like, do you have any suggestions about how I can figure out what credentialing is going to be required?
Yes, I actually have 2 kind of pieces to that. So the first is determining if you're a NASEP institution. So NASEP has, you know, kind of certain things that they want to monitor, I guess, in terms of credentialing. But they tend to give a lot of the decision making over to both the accrediting body under which your institution falls and your institution. So NACEP says that the people should be credentialed by whatever the expectations would be at your institution. So if they're required to have X degree or X experience at your institution, then it should be the same for your high school instructors. So at a minimum, they have to have that. But then on top of that, then you have to layer in if your accrediting body has different requirements. So we're an HLC institution. The HLC has said that instructors either have to have a master's degree in the content area they're teaching, a master's degree in anything but 18 graduate credit hours in the content area they're teaching, or, and this is where it gets a little more subjective, if it's considered a career and technical education course, then it could be based on sort of lived experience. It doesn't have to fall under this like academic, like you have a master's degree kind of category. But that is where I would kind of charge you all to be thinking about, okay, if that is the requirement, maybe having those conversations amongst yourself to see like, okay, what do we think that standard should be? Because if like I said, for HLC, they've left that very open. So be thinking about, what makes sense. Is it having actual work in a cybersecurity field? Is there graduate credit they should have? Is there other credentialing or micro-credentialing certificates they should have to kind of make that a little more streamlined? Because those subjects gets a little more complicated.
All good things to think about. So really got to do that research. Hopefully you have an ASAP school, right, to make it easier for you.
It just means someone's already done a lot of this work for you and they can just tell you what you need to do.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Any participants have any questions? And I know that there are like a number of resources too. So like, let's say you have a school, you have a teacher who wants to teach it, but maybe they don't have the certifications or the cyber background that you were really hoping. And I know that there is some teacher training available. Dr. Tu, do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure, I just put the link there. It's I know the National Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity community, right? So we have a few high school teacher training initiatives there. One of that is the National Cybersecurity Training Academy. Okay, so those are like a few schools. I think is four schools, right? So I think DePaul University and the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, right? Maybe I get it wrong, but anyway. So I know one of the California State University, right? So I think at Sacramento, they offer this, the training. I think it's free. So I don't know the details, but I know they have such an initiative supposed to be free. So it's they will offer a certificate program for 12 maybe to 18 credit, right? Because that's required. So then they can at the graduate level. So that's one of that. And I know there are some other teaching initiatives, right, for teacher training. So I don't know. I mean, currently I don't have all of those information at this moment. But if you want to know details, we can definitely help you, right, to identify those resources for you.
No, this is really helpful. I think this will at least get people looking in the right direction and finding those opportunities. Because it would be great if you might find a teacher at a school who's really eager and really wants to work with you, but they just don't have the cybersecurity experience to maybe be the best teacher that could be for that. So it's great that we've got some training resources for them. Thank you, Dr. Tu. Any other questions anybody's got? Oh, well, okay, Katie and Rachel, like, let's say I've sat through this presentation. I am all on board. I want to start my concurrent enrollment agreement. I really want to get started on this. What should my first step be as soon as I finish this Zoom? They're both just laughing.
I would say first step, see if your institution has an office who's already doing concurrent enrollment work, because if you have the course, then they can kind of do a lot of the other stuff. It's just going to make it a lot easier. That would be my answer.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, of course. See what relationships, what partnerships they already have going, and then how you can work in that to create a new experience, and maybe, you know, that way they know there's a new department that wants to partner with them as well. They might have even more resources for you as well.
Perfect.
If you discover there's not an office, which there might not be, maybe your institution isn't already offering current enrollment, I would look around to see who already has a presence in the local schools then, because maybe they don't have concurrent enrollment, but you have someone who does do outreach in the admissions office, or someone in your, you know, Department of Education at the school, whoever offers a, you know, major in education, they obviously have connections in the field. So don't feel like you have to completely start from scratch. This is where there's probably a lot of good resources at your institution, where you get to be the content expert and really focus on teaching these classes well and getting this information out there, and then they can take care of all that other pesky administrative stuff.
Or you can just contact us, right? Contact Amber and Michael. So how to start?
Yes,
We're
yes.
always here to help.
Always here to help, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, I don't think I'm out of questions. I've asked all my questions. So I think, Mike, did you want to talk just a little bit about the
Sure.
CTA
So
students?
if you're here in this meeting, chances are you've already filled out this survey that we had sent out earlier in the year. Thank you. So as of June 5th, I updated the rest of the map. I did not update that date. As of October, we have 223 participants, people who filled out the survey. Thank you very much. And we could see by state by state breakdown of those. So thank you very much for doing that. And if you haven't, please fill out our survey for us. It's going to make our work connecting these pieces, who and where credit transfer agreements are in place. It's going to make that much easier, and that's going to benefit all of us in the long run. All right. Do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Tu?
Yeah, I think we do have a lot of schools already had that CTAs, right? So then, you know, we plan to you know, contact you probably within 1 month, right?
That's right.
To ask for more details for, you know, what type of you know, mechanisms you are working on, like you using AP, right? Or using dual credit, concurrent enrollment, or simply using CTE, right? So those are, you know, a little bit different from the DCE. So you know, yeah, so that's what we plan to do the next, right?
Exactly. As Dr. Tu has said, you can expect another survey from us within the next month or so that will kind of expand upon the research that we've already been doing and asking you for a little bit more information about the programs that you currently have in place. So thank you very much for your participation in our surveys. Did I freeze?
Do we have the next slide, right? Do we?
We do have a next slide.
Not moving. Okay.
And for those who haven't, this is a link to our initial survey that will collect the data on credit transfer agreements with your school. So if you have not filled this out, or you feel that you need to update it, this is the link to that. And that's all I have.
Amber, now it's your time. So you mute yourself, I think.
Yeah, we can share the link over chat.
Definitely, yeah.
So let me.
That's
And that
the
is the
survey,
link.
right? Yeah.
Yep. I think there might be a little bit of a delay in in mine. All right.
So I think Amber probably it's muted herself, or
I don't know, but we did lose her sound. So
yeah,
she doesn't appear to be muted, but
yeah.
the effect is there.
How about now?
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah, probably.
I hit the lap toggle and I didn't realize it. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming out today. We hope that this information was helpful and at least gets you thinking and going in the right direction for developing your agreements. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We really hope that you got some value out of this workshop today. Thanks again. And you get 30 minutes back.
So we will send out the recording, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll send a link to it on our YouTube page.
Yep, we'll
Yeah.
load it up to YouTube. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop.
Thank you.